Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 272, The Four Noble Truths and the Buddha's Three Vehicles.
This is podcast number whatever it is, free to everyone. And it is celebrating the majesty and the historic moment of the first turning of the wheel of reality, the wheel of freedom. That freedom is inevitable. Freedom, intelligence, wisdom, love, bliss, and compassion for everyone. That wheel is unstoppable. It rolls everywhere. And everyone gets it because it's in every human being's mind. Really, at the deepest level, everyone has an affinity and attunement to it. It doesn't mean adopting it doesn't mean everyone's going to be a Buddhist at all. It means everyone's going to be enjoying their reality with the hearty congratulation from the founders of every tradition. And the people maintaining them as sort of dominating institutions will be happily relieved from having to dominate anybody, because everybody will have realized the aim of their worldview, their truth, their credo, their disciplines, whatever it is. So everyone will graduate. Wonderful. And then also this will be part of the course, which is I recommend to everyone, which is the Vajra Yoga through the Buddha's Three Vehicles, companion of the Yoga Alliance 200-hour yoga class, Vajra Yoga class given by my colleague Michelle Clearlight Lowe, starting this month, starting next week, I think, or maybe already started. Okay. And I'm also, of course, promoting my Wisdom is Bliss book, because I think it also gives a good three-vehicle vision, three-vehicle unified, three-vehicle coordinated vision of the Eightfold Path and of the four friendly fun facts or noble truths. And I'm very pleased with it. It's a result of 60 years of study, 57 years of study with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and friendship with him. Studying with him is being his friend, because he's friendly. He's not some domineering weird guru. He's a friendly teacher, spiritual friend, which is the best model of a guru in the Buddhist tradition. And not domineering weirdo. And I also want to promote to those of you who are interested, and tell your friends, please help me. I want to promote the Vajra Yoga 5 coming up in December, where we will use the Book of the Dead knowledge of the art of dying, preceding a wonderful conference that we will be holding early next year, with all kinds of experts in the death and dying: Andrew Holacek, Frank Ostashevsky, Joan Halifax, and doctors and nurses and many hospice people and all kinds of great, I think 15, 20 wonderful people. We will be doing that. And so, but we're doing a Vajra Yoga thing with the Book of the Dead, Nyingma kind of teaching for 10 days retreat, which will be hybrid. Some people will come to the Menla mountain retreat in the snowy winter in December. Some people will most people will probably be online, but it will be open as a hybrid. First teaching of the Buddha, what is called the Dhammacakrapravartana Sutra in Pali, and it has another in Sanskrit is Dharmacakrapravartana Sutra, and but the version that might be closest to the original one by the Buddha, his first teaching to the monks. In our Mahayana tradition, in Tibet, of course, the Buddha had already taught the whole Flower Ornament Sutra while he was sitting under the Bodhi tree in all over the universe. But then, when he decides to teach it in the Indian society, which is why he took rebirth and went there, he wanted first to go teach his Brahmin yoga teacher. He wanted to teach him first, and but then he realized that those two original yoga teachers had passed away. Alada, Kalarama, etc., Udaka, whatever their names were. And one taught him how to reach this formless state of nothingness. And the other one taught, seeming nothing, which is obviously not nothing, but it's a state. And the other one had introduced him to the samadhi on the formless state of neither conscious nor unconscious. And but then he rejected both of them in the sense that he didn't stay with those teachers because he decided that what they thought were the final stages were actually not the final stages. So he moved on, and eventually he attained enlightenment himself by his own investigation of the nature of reality rather than by going into a formless state. And which is, of course, the difference between nirvana and these various formless states, which was therefore built into Buddha's teaching right in the beginning. The idea that the uncreated, the ultimately real, that has always been the case and that remains at all times the case, nirvana, the cessation of suffering, where there is no suffering because it's pure energy and nothing bumps into anything, so there's no suffering. But everything is there, but perceived in a way where it doesn't bump into each other, which is paradoxical, of course. And in our perception, in our habitual dualistic perception, but that's sort of the way it was right from the beginning in the story. But anyway, when he goes to teach it in the world of the Indian society of the time, he doesn't right away hit them up about non-duality and this sort of complex, inexpressible thing. Instead, he gives the turning of the wheel of Dharma because that's what they need. Because the 5 first disciples who were with him, who were tremendous ascetics, as he was, mortifiers of the flesh, so to speak, they had abandoned him and they had gone to Sarnath near Varanasi, where he was in Bodh Gaya, about a couple of days' walk away, under the Bodhi tree when he attained enlightenment. So then he knew by clairvoyance where they were, and then he walked over through a couple, I think 2-3 days, to see them, because it was sort of back in the ordinary reality of the time. And the idea being in the ordinary reality of the time that you can't, when you're in such a world like today, the world is falling apart, climate change, et cetera, all kinds of bad dictators all over the place. So we are also in a situation where people somehow can't quite conceive that reality might be perfect, because it seems so dreadful, this disorganized, chaotic reality. And therefore, we can only conceive of freedom from suffering as some sort of altered state. So Buddha let it stand like that, so to speak. He didn't really push them about nibbana. Anyway, let's go. Let's listen to the first teaching of the Wheel of Dharma. Let's look at the actual text. And this is an old-fashioned translation, and I'll try not to insist on editing it all the time. I'll try to just read it, okay? So the Dharmacakrapravartana Sutra means the discourse which is the turning of the wheel of Dharma. And the wheel here is a symbol, I'll comment as we go, is a symbol of a machine, actually, and also of something that is powerful. Because what they had were war chariots that went on wheels. They also had transport carts, which went on wheels. And so the idea of a wheel was like something that had great power. And it's a symbol of a king. Symbol of kings were wheels because they had chariots in their armies, and they were chariot fighters. They had chariot fighters. So here though is the reality wheel, turning of the reality wheel, and this means this is a teaching that is like a powerful chariot that can take you, break you out of the world of suffering and ignorance and into the world of freedom and bliss, nirvana. Okay, but let's just read it now. So that's the Dharmacakravartana. That's why it's called turning of the wheel of Dharma. Thus have I heard. They just translate. I like to, and then they say once. So in later commentaries of sutras, thus have I heard at one time should sort of go together. So the once should go back with thus have I heard, or thus did I hear at one time, or on a certain occasion. So meaning that it's a symbol of authenticity of a teaching, of a sutra. And it means that the person who is narrating it was there when the Buddha gave the teaching. And the narrator initially always gives a setting where the Buddha was, and then he repeats the teaching. All right. So once when the Blessed One, Buddha that is, was staying in the pleasance of Ishipatana, the grove or the garden of Ishipatana, the deer sanctuary near Benares, he spoke to the group of 5 mendicants. These were already ascetic mendicants who lived on alms, and the name for them is bhikshu or bhikkhu in Pali. And people often translate this as monk, but they're not really monks. They are just ascetic wanderers who don't do anything to make food. They don't hunt, they don't plow, they don't farm. They just ask people for food. So they're bhikshu. They eat by begging. Okay, so once when the Blessed Buddha was staying in the garden of Ishipatana, the deer sanctuary near Benares, he spoke to the group of the 5 mendicants. These 2 extremes mendicants should not be followed by one who has gone forth from worldly life, sensual indulgence, low, coarse, vulgar, ignoble, unprofitable, and self-torture, painful, ignoble, and unprofitable. So neither sensual indulgence nor self-torture. So he says sensual indulgence, which is low, coarse, vulgar, ignoble, and unprofitable, and self-torture, painful, ignoble, and unprofitable. So those are the 2 extremes. Mendicants, the middle way, understood by the Tathagata, which means one who has realized suchness, meaning the illusoriness of all things, therefore the reality of their underlying reality, and then recognizing the illusoriness of how they seemed before, and therefore all things are just such. That realization of reality, so Tathagata is one of the names of Buddha. Understood, so mendicants, the middle way, understood by the realized one, after he had avoided the extremes. And remember, Buddha is talking here to people who are torturing themselves, and they had abandoned him. They were his companions. He was torturing themselves for 6 years, actually, and they were with him. And then they abandoned him because he seemed to give up that torture. He said it's not cool. He took a bath. He ate food. He cleaned himself up, And they said, "Oh, he's going to indulge himself, and so he's no good." And they left. And so then he went to see them. And now I'm talking; it's not the sutra. He went to see them to give them his first teaching, because at least he knew they were deeply sincere seekers, although they were going into the extreme, one of the extremes, which was the self-torture extreme, right? So, like in yoga, it's either just being completely be here now and letting things just be what they are, and it is sort of overdoing your discipline where it is painful to you and so on. Mendicants, I'm now reading again. Mendicants, the middle way, understood by the realized one, after he had avoided the extremes, produces vision, produces knowledge, and leads to calm, to penetration, to enlightenment, and to nirvana. What middle way, mendicants, understood by the realized one, produces vision, produces knowledge, and leads to calm, to insight, to enlightenment, to nirvana? Only this noble eightfold path, namely realistic understanding, realistic thought, realistic speech, realistic action, realistic livelihood, realistic effort, realistic mindfulness, and realistic concentration. Truly, mendicants, this middle way, understood by the realized one, produces vision, produces knowledge, and leads to calm, penetration, insight should really be, enlightenment, and nirvana. So it's interesting. He doesn't say right away, now I go to commentary, he doesn't say right away that there are four noble truths and they are one, two, three, four. He just immediately talks about the middle way, not being too self-indulgent and not being too restrictive or constrictive, so to the level of mortification, self-torture. But then he right away gives the Eightfold Path, which is actually the fourth noble truth. Or, in my book, Wisdom is Bliss, which is based on the Four Noble Truths, because it's the basic framework of the Buddha's teaching. Even though I'm talking there about advanced yogic insight of bliss, bliss yoga, Vajra yoga. I call them friendly facts, and I'll explain that. But first, let's finish the sutta. So he, anyway, goes straight to the curriculum in a way. So it sort of proves the point that the Buddha's teaching is a curriculum, and it involves understanding, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, and uh, and which are realistic, or as they say in the old translations, they say they're right, meaning they lead to reality. But I feel that realistic is better for samyak in Sanskrit, or sama in Pali. So so that's what he does, and that leads to nirvana. He says that right away. Then he comes back to give them in the order of the Four Noble Truths, which is an order, the order of a medical diagnosis. So then he comes back to that. After he first gives the curriculum, I never even sort of made a fuss about that. Because one hears so much about Four Noble Truths, you don't actually necessarily look in detail at the very first, supposedly the very first giving of that teaching in the history of this Buddha, of this era. Okay, so then he begins with the first Noble Truth, which is known as the Noble Truth of Suffering. He says the Noble Truth of Ill. And recently, my great friend, my new great friend, Robert Thurman, the great yogi and the great Kundalini teacher and student, he calls it the Noble Truth of Uneasiness rather than suffering, which I will come back to, which I like. Anyway, here it's called ill. So this bhikshus is the Noble Truth of ill. Birth is ill, decay is ill, disease is ill, death is ill. Association with the unloved is ill. Separation from the loved is ill. Not to get what one wants is ill. In short, the 5 aggregates of grasping are ill, or the 5 heaps of functioning are ill, you could even say, or grasping, undertaking things, activism, activity. This mendicants, so that's the noble truth of ill: birth, decay, disease, death, association with the unloved, separation from the loved, not to get what one wants, and to get what one doesn't want. But he just puts not to get what one wants. In short, the aggregates are one's body, one's sensations, one's conceptions, ideas, one's emotions, and one's consciousnesses. And these are called the 5 aggregates traditionally, but really the word skanda really means a heap. So we are made of 5 body, mind heaps. It's the idea, and it's all ill. All right. This, mendicants, is the noble truth of the source of ill. The craving which causes rebirth is accompanied by passionate pleasure and takes delight in this and that object, namely sensuous craving, craving for existence, and craving for annihilation. So that is the second noble truth. It's the source of ill, the cause of it. And because of the Buddha's insight into the cause of suffering or ill, the Buddha is celebrated in Indian philosophical history, Indian cultural history, as the discoverer of causation. Just like in Greek history, the Dr. Galen was the first one to speak about analyzing things in terms of their causes. When he tried to analyze a plague that afflicted his hometown of Rhodos, and he analyzed it in terms of the germs that caused it, or the putrefaction disease that caused it, rather than in terms of thinking that the gods were causing it, which the other people were thinking. So the discovery of causation is considered a big thing, a big scientific thing, actually. So this cause or source of ill is, in a way, really what Buddha is most famed for. So to read it again, this mendicants is the noble truth of the source of ill. The craving which causes rebirth is accompanied by passionate pleasure and takes delight in this and that object, namely sensuous craving, craving for existence, and craving for annihilation. So that's the second noble truth. The third noble truth: this, mendicants, is the noble truth of the cessation of ill, the complete cessation, the giving up, the abandonment of that craving, complete release from that craving, and complete detachment from it. So the third one is nirvana. Cessation, nirodha, is a synonym of nirvana. Nirvana, you can say, means blowing out. And then people will go overboard and translate it as extinction. But you can say you extinguish a candle when you blow it out. So it's not wrong, but it's just a little extreme. And cessation, nirodha, is just means to stop it. So the stopping of suffering. And there, he doesn't say, notice, stopping of life. It says the stopping of suffering. And that's the third noble truth. The complete cessation, the giving up, the abandonment of that craving, complete release from that craving, and complete detachment from it. So here, in a way, Buddha is sticking on, Shakyamuni Buddha here is sticking on this issue of craving, in the sense that the craving is the suffering, and it's the source of the suffering. And he's doing that, in a way, it's a little bit simplistic, because why does one crave? Because of a fundamental ignorance, actually. He explains in many contexts very soon in other teachings. But in the context even of the right understanding, he puts the cause as misunderstanding. And then the craving itself is based on the misunderstanding. because the misunderstanding is that one thinks one is a separate being, that one is deficient in many ways and defective in many ways, and one doesn't have or what one really wants, and one isn't where one really wants to be, because one bumps into things bump into one. There are lacks and wants and so on. And so by feeling separate, that's the real reality of things, and feeling alienated and so forth, one then craves some form of unity. One craves more. One craves connection. One craves what one thinks one doesn't have. All right. So but he is starting out with these ascetics that he were his basic companions, and he started out by emphasizing the craving, because they think they're beyond craving because they are tormenting themselves. So they're trying to make an antidote to craving pleasure by making themselves feel pain. But he's saying it's the craving itself that is the source of suffering, not necessarily the craving for pleasure. It's any kind of craving. And then he notes, which is very important, that not only is there a craving for existence, you could say that would be the survival instinct. Sensuous craving is the craving for pleasure, but also we all naturally do have a craving for annihilation. And even if we're not drug addicts or committing suicide, we have this kind of a craving, and it expresses itself in our normal life, actually. When we're really tired and exhausted and fed up, we want to be unconscious. We want to sleep. We do go to sleep at that point, right? We pass out. We happily give up our consciousness. So then finally, the fourth noble truth, back to reading. This, mendicants, is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of ill. Only this noble eightfold path, namely realistic understanding, realistic intentional thought, realistic speech, realistic action, realistic livelihood, realistic effort, realistic mindfulness, and realistic concentration. With the thought, this is the noble truth of ill, there arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. With the thought, this is the noble truth of ill, and this ill has been understood, there arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, concerning things unknown before. Anyway, so that's like dealing with the cause. With the thought, this is the noble truth of ill, and this ill has been understood, there arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, not fight. But it's a misprint in this edition I have. It says fight, but it should be light. That's it. Light, concerning things unknown before. With the thought, this is the noble truth of the source of ill. There arose in me, bhikkhus, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. Oh, I see. He has four different thoughts for each noble truth. Okay, so he says, after he gives the four of them, the noble truth of ill, the noble truth of the source of ill, the noble truth of the cessation of ill, and the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of ill. Those are the four. Then he has four thoughts. With the thought, this is the noble truth of ill, he got all this wisdom, knowledge, insight, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, five things. Then this is the noble truth of ill, and this ill has been understood, because he understood it the first time. Then there arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, light, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. Then again, with the thought, this is the noble truth of ill, and this ill has been understood. Again, he said, there arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. And then with the thought, this is the noble truth of the source of. So he repeats, in a way, noble truth of ill has been understood, noble truth of ill. No, three times he repeats. Okay, not four, three. And it seems almost that it does seem that the second and the third are just repeating the same, exactly same thing. And we'll take note of that. Okay. And now he moves on to the source. And he does two of those. No, three. He does three of them. With the thought, this is the noble truth of the source of ill. There arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. Again, with the thought, this is the noble truth of the source of ill. This source of ill has to be abandoned. Aha. There arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. And then he repeats this with the thought, this is the noble truth of the source of ill, and this source of ill has been abandoned. There arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. So this is very interesting in the sense that these three times he repeats this, he says that first time he just repeats that he identifies the noble truth. Then he does what you're supposed to do about that second one, which you are to abandon that source. And then he repeats that it has been abandoned. Has to be abandoned, that's a slight difference. It has to be abandoned and has been abandoned. And in that way, I see. So then, actually, this has to be edited. I'm sorry, a lot of mistakes. So it's not an exact repetition with the first one, where it says the noble truth of will and this noble truth of will has been understood. The first time he says that it should be has to be understood, because the middle one is. Oh, you can't edit this PDF, right? Anyway, the middle one is. I think I have to do a new translation of this. Sorry, it's an old-fashioned one, but never mind. So there are three things that don't completely repeat. The first one is this is the truth. Then it's to be understood or to be abandoned in the case of the first and the second. And then it has been abandoned, has been understood, and has been abandoned. It's the third time he repeats it, okay? So has to be abandoned, then he repeats with the thought, this is the noble truth of the source of ill, and this source of ill has been abandoned. There arose in me mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light concerning things unknown before. So he got rid of the craving, he says. Now, with the thought, this is the noble truth of the cessation of ill, there arose in me mendicants, vision, knowledge, thought, insight, wisdom, light concerning things unknown before. And so he says, with the thought, this is the noble truth of the cessation of ill, and this cessation of ill has to be realized. There arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light concerning things unknown before. And then he repeats almost, except he says, with the thought, this is the noble truth of ill, and this cessation of ill has been realized. Again, that should be, this is the cessation of the noble truth of ill, the noble truth of the cessation of ill, and this cessation of ill has been realized. There arose in me, mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. And so has been, so it's a to be realized and has been realized. And note, there's a difference between has been understood, is to be understood, and has been understood, and has been realized. So the first noble truth, you're to just understand it or acknowledge it. In a way, it doesn't have to be realized in a sense, because everyone knows about suffering, actually. So you don't have to make it real, so to speak. You don't have to make a change to get it. You just have to note what really is there. And then with nirvana, you have to realize that, make it be so for you. That is to say, viscerally understand. So that's the difference between understand and realize. Realize means make it real, which is a visceral way, experience, full experience. Okay. So then finally, with the thought, this is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of ill, there arose in me mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. With the thought, this is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of ill, and this way has to be developed. there arose in me mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light concerning things unknown before. And with the thought, this is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of ill, and this way has been developed. There arose in manifest. I don't know, manifest. It has been traveled really, because it's a way, But anyway, developed. There arose in me mendicants, vision, knowledge, insight, wisdom, light, concerning things unknown before. So those are called the 12 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, 3 per Noble Truth. And they are his gradual, these are taught already to you in the cessation, in the Satipatthana Sutta, because toward the end of the Satipatthana Sutta is a very thorough exposition of the Four Noble Truths by Buddha himself, in the context of the focusing of one's mindfulness on them, and in the sense that is where you actually attain that nirvana. That is where you actually manifest the Eightfold Path. You travel on that way. You become that way. You graduate on the curriculum of that way. Okay, so then he says, so long, mendicants, as my knowledge and vision of reality regarding these Four Noble Truths in 3 phases and 12 ways was not fully clear to me, I did not declare to the world with its gods and devils, to the mass of beings with its gods and humans, that I understood incomparable perfect enlightenment. But when mendicants, as my knowledge and vision of reality regarding these Four Noble Truths in 3 phases and 12 ways was fully clear to me, I declared to the world with its gods and devils, to the mass of beings with its gods and humans, that I understood incomparable perfect enlightenment. Knowledge and vision arose in me. Unshakable is the deliverance of my mind. This is my last birth. Now there will be no birth. Thus spoke the Blessed One, the Blessed Buddha, and the group of 5 mendicants, glad at heart, approved of the words of the Blessed Buddha. As this exposition was proceeding, the passion-free, stainless view of truth appeared to the Venerable Kondanya, and he knew everything that has the nature of arising has the nature of ceasing. When the Blessed Buddha set in motion this wheel of Dharma, the Bhum-arta Devas proclaimed with one voice, the gods of the Bhumata. The incomparable wheel of Dharma is turned by the Blessed Buddha at Isipatana, the dear sanctuary near Benares, and no recluse, Brahmin, God, devil, creator, Brahma, or other being in the world can stop it. The Chatumaharajika Devas, the gods of the 4 great kings, heaven, on the upper slopes of the Axial Mountain, near the North Pole, having heard what the Bhumata Deva said, proclaimed with one voice, the incomparable wheel of Dhamma is turned by the Blessed Buddha at Isipatana, the dear sanctuary near Benares, and no recluse, Brahman, Deva, Mara, Brahma, or other being in the world can stop it. Actually, they're translating recluse, but it's not really correct. It's a mendicant, is what it should be. Or samana, seeker, you could say. This utterance was echoed and re-echoed in the upper realms, and from Chatumaharajika, it was proclaimed in Tavatimsa, 33 heaven of Indra, Yama, the realm of no conflict, thence to Tushita, to Nirmanarati, and to Paranirmita Vashavati, so also to those other desire realm, all 6 desire realm heavens. Then the Brahma-bodied gods, having heard what the Paranimita Vasavati gods said, proclaimed in one voice, The incomparable wheel of Dharma is turned by the Blessed One at Isipatana, the deer sanctuary near Benares, and no seeker, Brahmin, Deva, Mara, Brahma, or other being in the world can stop it. Deva Mara means God, human, and Brahma means creator God, or other being in the world can stop it. Thus, in a moment, an instant, a flash, word of the turning of the wheel of Dharma went forth up to the world of Brahma, that's the personal Brahma, and the system of 10,000 worlds trembled and quaked and shook. A boundless, sublime radiance, surpassing the power of the gods, appeared on earth. Then the Blessed One made the utterance, truly, Kondanya has understood. Kondanya has understood. And thus it was that the Venerable Kondanya got the name Kondanya the Wise. So that's it. That's the end of it. Very short sutta. Very, very nice one. But there's a few, so the things finally to summarize in this Four Noble Truth talk. I'm doing it as a podcast to celebrate Shakyamuni Buddha's great discovery and the original version of his four friendly facts. And then Kondanya, it's also very important in the narration of the sutta that Kondanya, Kaundinya in Sanskrit, or Kondanya here, that he understood it. So right away, because of the Buddha's field of understanding and wisdom, his wisdom field, you could say, and also because of the teaching, his mind following closely with the teaching, and also because he was a disciplined yogic meditative person, only too obsessed with tormenting himself up until now. But he was an extraordinary person, and he was totally involved with Shakyamuni, and because Shakyamuni broke through, he got a powerful wave of the breakthrough. But anyway, when he went through these 12 ways of appropriating the Four Noble Truths in this original thing, he understood it. He realized it. He touched nirvana, that is. He didn't become a Buddha because he didn't touch it in the vast way. He touched it in the Arhat way, because he was approaching it from a little bit dualistic way still, as if nirvana, the reality of things, was really something separate from the unreality. So instead of the reality of things is like the screen on which the unreality is projected. So it's like not separate. Like the surface of a movie screen is just really a blank white thing. But then on it are all the activities of the movie, in 2 dimensions, that hit it in 2 dimensions by the miracle of photography and cinematography. All right. So, but he's just discovered the white screen, let's just say, and he has a taste of relief of it. He's sort of not, he then, in coming back to speaking to the Buddha and saying, oh, I get it. He may be thinking he's leaving it and reporting back into the world of still, because he still thinks it has some reality. So he still has he still has elements of dualism in his view. Okay, so this is wonderful. But anyway, it was also very strongly addressed by Buddha in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, which I gave which is there in another one of the talks that you have. And that's really, really important. All right? So in summary here, the one important thing is it kind of proves the point by the fact that before he lists the Four Noble Truths and then the 3 ways of approaching each of them, he lists the curriculum of the Fourth Noble Truth. And so he lists the therapy right away after talking about the middle way and getting his colleagues to stop realizing the futility of their continuing to torture themselves. And I'm sure none of them, including him, had slightest interest in going back to self-indulgence, going back to some sort of orgies and brothels or whatever. They have no interest in such a thing. So he wants them just to drop out and come back to the middle way and take care of themselves a little bit nicely and then focus on the Four Noble Truths. But first, it's on the curriculum of the fourth one that you have to focus on. because not everyone is going to get it just by listing them or just encountering them in the fourth focus on mental objects of the great sutra on mindfulness, the great discourse on mindfulness. So he gives the eightfold path right away. And so that's point one. It is an educational curriculum. It's not a matter of believing in some truths. Maybe you believe in the first one, you understand it, you acknowledge it, you notice it. Then you abandon the second one, not believe, you abandon it, the source. Then you realize the fourth one, not just believe it, but third one rather, you realize it. Then the fourth one, you use the therapy, you practice it, you walk on it, the path, you become the path, you be the path. And so it's not like these truths are not like the credos of a religion. They are more like the prescription of a doctor who prescribes a course of therapy, or they could be the protocol of a teacher who prescribes a course of study and practice and learning. And that's really what Buddhism really is. And you can see it from the very beginning in the level of encountering ordinary humans, although very advanced ones as far as being advanced yogis. These five were. They'd been 6 years of yogic extremism practicing with him. So, proof of curriculum 1. 2, understanding the Noble Truths as friendly facts, leading to the bliss of nirvana. Fun facts because nirvana is fun. It's not annihilation. It's not extinction. It's not being blown away in the sense of the mafia use of blowing someone away, naming to kill them. It is being blown away in the rock and roll concert or Mozart opera, a drama of being blown away with delight, with joy, discovering what has always been in a world of immense beauty as a beautiful participant, complete bliss, in other words, and then sharing that bliss with endless others. In fact, expanding one's infinite life to the benefit of every other infinite being, helping them discover their own infinite life. Wonderful. Not at all annihilation. All by being rid of craving and the ignorance that produces it, the misknowledge that produces it, the misknowledge of thinking that something wrong. One doesn't have enough of whatever it is. All right? So that's the summary of the first turning of the Wheel of Dharma. That's the historic thing, because that wheel went ahead, it's going ahead, and it conquered the world. It's a royal chariot wheel, and it conquered the ignorance and the suffering of all beings. And then we say, wait a minute, what? We are not free of suffering and ignorance. What happened to us? And that's where then the secret teaching of the Wheel of Time, comes in. And Shambhala is when we realize that Shakyamuni really did turn this world of suffering, very militarized, scarcity-dominated, rough and tough world that we've been in for the last thousands of years, turned it into a Garden of Eden, restored us all to the Garden of Eden type of thing, which is Shambhala in that version. New Jerusalem for Christians, the return of the Mahdi for the Muslims, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, and where everyone realizes the love of Vishnu, and for the Hindus, and I guess for everyone, this is one with the Tao for the Chinese, for the that great people. All right, so that's it. Thank you very much. Okay, now this is going to be a podcast. Okay, now we break there, and we dedicate the merit of that made the Dharmacakra, the time, the reality wheel, make everyone on the planet more realistic and discover the reality of the beauty of life and the beauty of love, and that they are love, and be loving, and then it's easy. We'll solve all these problems, all the racial, the economic, the technological, all problems, political, every single problem will be solved when everyone realizes they are love. When Mitch McConnell realizes he is love, even when Trump realizes he's beloved, everyone loves him, not just some angry people, but everyone. And he is love, therefore he should be loving to everyone and not trying to make them angry. Okay, not have any enemies. And Putin realizes that, and Xi Jinping realizes that, and all the communists and all the right-wing fanatic fascists and all the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims and the Buddhists and the Hindus and the Jains and the Taoists and the Confucianists and the indigenous people and everyone. So may everyone reach Shambhala. May we dedicate the merit of this, that this Dharma chakra, this truth machine, reality machine, may it go everywhere and free people from misknowing and living in untruth and living in unreality, being unrealistic and frightened and suffering. Okay? May they all be free from that as instantaneously in some ultimate sense and relatively as soon as possible. Okay?
The Bob Thurman podcast is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and listeners like you, and is distributed through a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please feel free to share, like, and post on your favorite social media platform. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.